button. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here today. We are going to allow maybe just a few more seconds to let anyone else that's joining get settled in. I'm joined today by a magnificent group of individuals who were excited to share with you a little bit about their work, how you can get involved, and we're going to participate as well in a postcard advocacy workshop with my colleague, Frank. Frank, do you want to say hi while we have people logging in?
Sure. Howdy. My name is Frank Thomas. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a Senior Assistant Director of Admission at Rollins College in Winter Park, Florida. Thanks for joining us today.
Awesome, Frank. So if you want to go to the next slide, we'll go ahead and highlight some again of the agenda items. We're here excited today about Florida's virtual advocacy workshop. We have our colleagues, Kelly Pekovich, as well as NACAC Director of Advocacy, CJ Powell. We'll go ahead and provide an in-person lobby date, but the most exciting piece, I think, will be how you can get involved at your individual level. And my colleague, co-chair Frank Thomas, will help you with creating your own postcards and sending them out to your representatives. So without further ado, we'll go on to the next slide and introduce Kelly Pekovich.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for logging in today. I do not want to take up much time, but again, like Rose said, my name is Kelly, and I am one of the co-chairs for government relations for the SACAC board, and I get the wonderful privilege of working with Rose and Frank on planning these kind of events. But I quickly just wanted to share that SACAC is advertising a National Advocacy Day for 2024. This year it will take place in DC on April 29th. That's a Monday, and then Tuesday, April 30th. I'm going to put in the chat the information that went out in the SACAC email to membership. Again, this is not an affiliate sponsored program. Another affiliate is hosting this, and we are just advertising this opportunity to membership. The link in the chat does say that you had to be signed up by Friday, February 2nd. If you were interested in attending, if you are interested, just try to get that filled out this week so we can have an idea of who's going, and you can start getting emails from the affiliate that is planning this event. We did offer some funding opportunities for this, and those have all been filled. So this would be a self-funded event that you would be going to. I personally have never been able to go, but I've heard from everyone who's attended something sponsored like this, that it is just truly one of their best experiences of being in this profession, being able to be in DC and advocate for things that we advocate for every single day in our home state. So I just wanted to pass along that opportunity. If you have any questions at all, please reach out to GovRel at sacac.org so we can answer your questions. But
Kelly,
again,
I'm
yes,
sorry to interrupt, Kelly. Would you please resend that in the chat and choose everyone? It went to just the hosts and the panelists.
Of course. See, Frank, this is why we keep you around, you know?
I tried to copy and paste it. It wouldn't let me do it. So
you catch my mistakes. That's why we keep you
there
around.
we go. That should, yep, everyone should be able to see that now.
I don't know if the link went through though for signing up. So I'll add that by when I just copied and pasted. I don't think the link went through, but I'll add that individually. So throughout the program, if you decide you want to attend, fill that out, click the link. And again, if you have any questions, just reach out to GovRel at sacac.org. So look forward to seeing everybody at the conference, and I'm going to kick it back to Rose and Frank.
Thanks, Kelly.
And I'm sorry, I will mention before Rose does our introduction that at the conclusion of this, both those of you with us and seeing the recording, we are going to follow up with an email that includes the slides that you're seeing and some of the resources, an opportunity for you to give us some feedback, and a couple of other items. So don't worry about trying to take a bunch of notes or grabbing that link or something like that. We'll make sure that we follow up and send all of that to you. Rose?
Thank you, Frank. So now we are privileged to have our Director of Advocacy for NACAC, CJ Powell. I had the opportunity to work with him earlier when the Supreme Court decided to ban affirmative action, and we had a really engaging session. So I'm so excited to have CJ back with us today to talk a little bit more about different initiatives that are being done within NACAC. He's been a supporter of student-centered policies, as well as worked with the Department of Education for both secondary institutions, a lifelong advocate, I think, for our students. So you are all on a very big treat in hearing from CJ today. So thank you so much again, CJ, for taking the time with us. And I want to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Rose and Frank, and the rest of the SACAC in Florida team. I'm thrilled to be here with you all. I always love speaking with my SACAC folks because as a North Carolinian, y'all are the people that I first kind of came up through the ranks when I was a college advisor in the college advising course. So really happy to be in community with you all today. I'm really excited to share for folks just kind of the breakdown of what advocacy is, how NACAC views advocacy, where we lead and where we also like to support and take the lead from you all, and just kind of some things that are coming up and down the pipeline that I think could be helpful for you as we think about advocacy moving forward and what this year, particularly since it's an election year, may look like and cause throughout this cycle. So first off, regarding advocacy, particularly around things related to the admissions process and college access and supporting students, you all are the experts. There is no other organization that meets the needs and expertise of this particular section of education like NACAC and like our regional affiliates. And I think you all should feel empowered when discussing with people about the admissions process and the initiatives that you all support. Feel comfortable exerting and exercising that you are the expert in this area. I think so often for so many people, college admissions is a black box. If you're on the K-12 side of the house, you're working with students and saying, all right, submit your Common App and or submit your institution-specific application, and parents and students do what they can, submit their best selves to the admissions offices and receive a letter. That's all they know. They don't know what happens in between the time that the application goes in and comes out, but you all do. And I think you should feel comfortable sharing those perspectives of what does it mean for students to submit the application. Like for many of our first generation college students, that is a humongous deal. And if nothing else, we need more support to ensure that they're able to submit that first application. What is it like when students receive a wide array of financial aid letters and they have to compare them across institutions, but they all say kind of different things? What does that mean? You all can share exactly what that means from whenever you're talking to students on the higher ed side, saying, all right, where are you thinking about going? How can we meet your needs? And on the K-12 side. So feel confident that no one knows more about this space than you all do, particularly your legislators. And I think that is something that you should feel confident in. Where NACAC leads as an organization at the national level, we really are focused on student and equity-centered admission practices. So what does it look like when an admissions process is actually focused on students and equity? I think that you will likely see a reduction in mental health challenges or spikes of challenges that students feel during the admissions process. I think you see diverse classes happening in spite of all the restrictions against it. So these are things that we really push on policymakers and legislators to think about. Professional responsibility and ethics for the college admission counseling professionals. That's something that we take very seriously. It's important to have rules of the road as we are working with students. And I think that becomes even more important when you think about students who are just entering this process for the first time, people who are the first in their families to go to school, or people for whom their family went to school a long time ago and things have changed. And so it's really important that we ensure that we have ethics and professional responsibility for this profession. And then we also want to expand the capacity and impact of school counselors and college advisors. We know what the numbers are looking like across the country in terms of caseloads. So I think that doesn't really need further explanation, even though that will come later on during this conversation. But those are the three main topics where we will take the lead. It's going to be the student equity centered admissions practices, professional responsibility and ethics to the college admission counseling profession, and expanding the capacity and impact of school counselors and college advisors. As we drill down to the student equity centered admissions piece, we want to make sure that we're always emphasizing the needs of the systemically underserved student. There's an old adage, a rising tide lifts all boats. If you are making sure that the most underserved and historically excluded students from these conversations are centered in a lot of these policy conversations, the outcomes for everyone will be better, including the students who most deserve and need that support. And so, whenever we can, we will lean in on that. So, if that means that we are exploring things like test optional practices and things like that to present good data to the field, we will do that. We also think of this as a way to expand our policy playing field. So thinking about things such as how basic needs are being met, and where we are able to provide additional supports for students that may not necessarily come specifically through the admissions process, but admissions offices can talk about those supports when they're discussing their campus with their prospective students. So thinking about how your institution supports those students with basic needs, those financial aid emergency grants, how are you going to help support students get through school after they get to you? And then we also are working to build NACAC into a clearinghouse of equity-centered practice. So if you're hearing or if your institution is doing a really great thing, share that with us so that we can lift up that best practice and that can be modeled across the country. Um, as we drill down more into the ethics and college admissions practices, thinking about ensuring that we are educating practitioners on ethical practices is important, but then also communicating our standards and ethical guidelines to the public and policymakers and media. We again want to exert our input ourselves as the experts on this. And so when we have those strong ethical guidelines, that shows that we are able to, as a field and as a community, work together as one and ensure that everyone has the same playing field if they want to be in this club. And I think that's really important. And then we also advocate for public policies that emphasize ethics in the college transition. So as we think about things as supporting students with disabilities and learning disabilities through the college admissions process, we also will advocate for things that will ensure that those students are taken care of in the college transition. So those are the kinds of things that we look at when we are thinking about the exploring the ethics in college admission. Thanks. The next slide is support for counselor and advising. We are really working hard to reduce the student to counselor ratio. I know in Florida, y'all have some very big schools and you also have some smaller schools. And so that brings the average kind of all over the place. But we know that Florida is operating at higher than that ASCA recommendation. And so we really want to make sure that we're able to serve students well. I think it's even more important in places as diverse as Florida. There's so many students who are encountering, so many students and families who are encountering the American higher education system for the first time. And so it's really important that we have enough folks who can help them through that process, make sure that they are speaking the languages needed to advise those families and get that information to them. And so that's really one of those important reasons why support for school counselors and college advising is incredibly important amongst many in Florida. Providing best practice information in state and local settings. One size does not fit all. I know I went to a more suburban high school, but I worked in a really rural area. And that experience showed me just how different two schools within the same state can be. And so there isn't necessarily a one size fit all, but is there a way that we can ensure that those who are serving the highest concentration of Title I students are getting the most support? Those institutions that are, serving those students on free and reduced lunch, those students, those places that are in those rural and remote areas, are they getting the support that they need in order to serve their students well? Which then helps everyone, including the state, move forward. And so that's another pillar that's really important to us. The next slide was kind of talk through the high level things that NACAC has been focused on in the last year or so. The first is college affordability. That's something that many folks have surfaced and raised as an issue as they pursue higher education. Most importantly, prospective students are trying to figure out how to navigate the affordability issues that they see with colleges and universities. But we also know that that's not all colleges and universities that have these super high price tags with no support, right? Most times when you see a good sticker price, you're probably going to get a discount rate at that school. And so, how do we share the fact that it isn't just the sticker price that you're going to encounter when you think about schools, but college is actually one more affordable than you likely think it is? And what are those other ways to ensure that you can go to the school of your choice? Up next is the student protections against fraud and abuse. This speaks to a lot of our regulatory work with the Department of Education, thinking about institutions that prey and defraud students. More than likely, those are the for-profit institutions that really target students and communities that get a lot of federal financial aid because they know that's guaranteed money. And so a lot of really great work has been done this last couple of years to ensure that happens. So we have closed the 90/10 loophole, which allowed institutions to kind of mask how much money they were getting from the federal government versus students. We were able to tamp down on the ways in which for-profit institutions can recruit students and the things they can say to those students, which is huge because they used to be able to just lie. And so those are the things that help ensure that students are going to schools that protect and take their interest to heart, and will support those students through graduation. We also support DACA and DREAM Act because we know that those students did not come here through any fault of their own, and they deserve to have an access to the promise that we tell students in school. We tell students, you go to school, you do well, you should be able to go on and pursue higher education. For so many students, that door has been closed because of their documentation status, and that's not fair. And so we will always push to ensure that there are ways that people of various immigration statuses are able to access our institutions at an affordable cost. And the last two are all about pathways as well. Global student mobility, so ensuring that colleges and universities can still recruit students from abroad and welcome students from abroad is really important to us because we know how much those students bring to our campus communities. And then transfer pathways. I think this is becoming increasingly more important as we approach 2025 and that demographic shift from where there were a lot of students graduating from high school to not as many students graduating from high school really comes into effect. Colleges and universities need to be able to work with community colleges and accept more students through those transfer pathways. So that means ensuring that there's articulation agreement lined up, ensuring that there's financial aid, ensuring that there's support politically to ensure that there are ways to get these students from our community colleges into the four-year schools of their wishes and dreams. The next slide shows kind of the big issues facing us right now. So the first one, as you all know, this is our first cycle post SFFA decision. We are currently in a situation where we have to wait and see where the data bears out. I think there's been a lot of preliminary data that showed that applications are going back to pre-pandemic numbers. And we are also seeing that a number of students from underserved communities are applying, which is great. So we'll see kind of where that shakes out in the admissions and yield to see that data and see how SFFA has really impacted the student experience and the college experience in the admissions process. Equity, I think, is another big issue that is facing higher education right now. You have, as a result of SFFA, a lot of people who are emboldened to say, we are colorblind under the law, and so there's no need to have anything that's different for anyone who's coming to our schools. And I think that that is just a really incredibly myopic outlook at how to serve our students and our institutions. I think of equity as ensuring that that people have what they need when they need it and how they need it. It is not about ensuring that there are people who have legs up in things or the like. It's ensuring that that student with disabilities has those accommodations that they need in order to be successful throughout their college experience because they're academically supported. It's ensuring that students have places where they can go and be in community with other students of similar interests or backgrounds so that they can feel like they have people to fall back on as support when times get tough. Ensuring that these things exist on college campuses only ensure that students are successful, that outcomes will be better, and that states in the country are getting a more educated, ready to work with diverse communities workforce. And so it's incredibly important that we don't lose sight of that as we move forward through these debates. FAFSA, I know that everyone on this call is feeling it a lot with FAFSA. Just so you know, I'm on the call regularly with the Department of Education about FAFSA and the issues that are coming up and what they need to do to fix it. Is a big shift in terms of technology, but I know that there are more resources coming out every week, it seems like now, to support the FAFSA processing and rollout. And college cost is again a big issue right now. Chairwoman Fotts of the House Education and Workforce Committee just dropped the College Cost and Reduction Act. Depending on who you talk to, they will say how they feel about that bill. That bill probably does not actually alleviate the cost of college based on our analyses. But they do a lot of other good things, like ensuring that students have a standardized financial aid form, and they are financial aid award letter and the like. And so there's give and takes, and we've let them know kind of our perspectives on the College Cost Reduction Act and ways to make it better. And then accreditation. I think there's a lot of energy around accreditation right now on both sides of the aisle. And we really want to make sure that accreditation can be what it's supposed to be, which is the gatekeeper to ensuring that any school that receives Title IV funds is giving an adequate and sufficient education based on whatever the accreditor deems is necessary. And the fact that there are attempts to use litmus tests and the like in accreditation, or to limit what can be used in accreditation to ensure that it's evolving for our students and what they need today is disappointing. And we hope that that can change moving forward. Next slide, please. And as you know, with advocacy, it takes a village. And so we are not doing this work in a vacuum, but we do it in a number of coalitions that you'll see on the next slide, some of the coalitions that we participate in. One is the Committee for Education Funding with various federal financial spending bills. It's really important that we keep an eye on that, and the Committee for Education Funding helps us do that by letting us know what the budget numbers are going to look like coming out of Congress as it relates to education. Project Thrive is where we work to support our LGBTQ youth. And so anything that we can do to lift up that community, we will do, and we'll oftentimes do it in concert with Project Thrive. And then another example is the National College Attainment Network, with whom we participate in these FAFSA weekly meetings about the various issues facing the field today. Next slide. And then we use some various resources and tools. And so the next slide will show you one, which is our action alert. We are in the process of partnering with a new action alert vendor. So in the coming weeks, we will have a new way for you all to engage with federal and state policy. And this will allow you to send a letter to your congressperson. You'll be able to sign petitions and the like. And so this will be a really great way for us to be able to communicate with you all about what's going on at the federal level and any actions that you should take or that we would like for you to take to help support our efforts. Next slide. And if you would like to stay up to date on the various advocacy efforts here, NACAC Wonk on Twitter is a really great way to do that. The NACAC Bulletin and Journal, we update that bulletin every couple of weeks. So there's oftentimes new things in the policy and advocacy section about any new letters that we signed or any bills that we endorsed or the like. And then we also have our website that has our statements of policy and advocacy efforts there. And on the next slide, you'll have my contact information about how to get in touch with me. But just wanted to make sure I saved a little bit of time if possible for there to be any questions that you all had about anything that we're doing at NACAC or anything that we should be doing more of. Thank you.
Thank you so much, CJ. So if you have any questions, you're welcome to use the Q&A chat or enter your question in the chat. If you want to raise your hand as well, we'd love to have you address, CJ address the question that you might have. That's burning. I know with FAFSA, there's definitely a lot of us that can resonate with the current struggles and trying to extend deadlines. And it'll be interesting to see how, from an institutional perspective, colleges will be providing more opportunities for students that don't have that information accessible. So that will be a really important initiative for all of us to collaborate together on. So, any questions for CJ Powell? Okay, CJ, well, we'll be sure to go ahead and forward any questions. Again, thank you for including your email on there. We will, be able to connect to you and provide a resource, and hopefully we'll see you at NACAC Advocacy Day. If, in the Capitol Hill, if you're over there planning to, we'd love to stay in touch with you and see you.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. All right, so I think one of the things that we had mentioned earlier, Kelly talked about the NACAC Advocacy Day. In the state of Florida, we actually had an opportunity to go to the Capitol here in Tallahassee, Florida, which is very difficult for a lot of us, right? Getting to drive 8 hours or flying to Tallahassee and back is not the most successful way to be able to advocate. However, the importance when you are there is incredible, because you get to have face-to-face interaction. I know we all love the virtual component, but also know how important it is to have that one-to-one with our legislators. So during the in-state lobby days, SACAC partnered with a nonpartisan organization called American Association of University Women to be able to make it more simple and be able to provide an opportunity for us to collaborate resources, collaborate time, collaborate different opinions and thoughts on areas that we can actually make an impact. So you'll hear throughout the workshop today about how you can make your voice heard. The in-state lobby day, it was an opportunity for us to actually speak one-to-one to legislators, to representatives. Again, we're all constituents, right? So just when we go to the Capitol, we need officials. Those officials know very well how dependent they are on the voters to be able to earn that spot in their representation. And being so, there's an extra devoted attention that's given to you when you're able to go there and say, Representative Escamani, I am a constituent from your area, and I want to talk to you about what issues are important to me and why you should support those issues. So lobby days really provides that opportunity for us to say, I am a person that's identified with this specific population. I represent the college admission counseling side. CJ talked about, his time before he had gone into the second education department at the Capitol, what that looked like working with high caseloads. So being able to talk on a one-on-one level with our representatives and sharing them that insight is really an advantage that you have when you're there, when you're able to see face to face. Again, our legislative session in Florida is actually one of the shortest. It's in Florida, it's about 60 days. So it begins at the beginning of January all the way until the first week of March. It is a very fast-paced environment. It's exciting because you do get to see a lot of movement. There are a lot of different groups. Again, we went with the AAW. We have other people there that are attending press conferences. But the most important part, even if your representative isn't available to speak with them at that moment, you can meet with another state legislative aide. Many times you'll be able to attend a committee session, hear a little bit more about what are the different opinions on the specific bill that's being addressed. You can actually waive in support of a bill or in opposition. So you're recording and documenting your different opinions in person at these sessions. And a lot of times these sessions will be live streamed as well, so that you can watch it from the comfort of your home if you're not able to get there in person. Again, we talked about working with bipartisan groups and the importance of that. So definitely sending an email to representatives, working with other groups that have common ground with the same bills that you're looking for is an added advantage of being able to go there together and lobby. At the beginning, next slide, please. At the beginning of the legislative session, we had a few bills that a lot of members in SACAC rose as far as issues that we wanted to track. Now, Frank is going to talk a little bit more about how a bill is formed and how that process moves forward. But moving from the beginning of, let's say, November all the way till now, we will see different bills proposed all until I think at one point I saw there was 1,787 bills proposed, which is a lot, right? So how can we as an organization find issues and opportunities for us to highlight the most important ones and also be strategic, right, about making an impact? We know with HB 999, that was something that as a college admission counseling association that we felt very strongly about, and we did our best in being able to voice our opinion. And now we're working after the aftermath of that and how to be able to help our students and help raise those concerns. So this list shows you a few of those different items that we found this legislative session that were important to you all. And then the two at the bottom, which is the Florida Bright Future Scholarship, my colleague Frank and another member rose that issue up front. And HB 49 is about a curfew, the House bill on employment and curfew for minors that they're trying to expand, actually reduce in a sense, so that there's less curfews for minors. Those are both moving forward in the legislative session in terms of having additional passing by the House, additional passing a bill in the Senate. So that's something that we've been able to watch a little bit more closely. In addition to that, if you want to go to the next slide, with AUW, we were able to also look at different areas related to education. One of the bills that did come out were the Freedom to Learn Act. And being able to kind of voice our concerns about reducing academic freedoms, reducing material. We know with HB 99, for example, there was an amended bill that included sociology, not only reducing psychology, right? So this bill goes along those lines of how they can continue to remove information or to question different types of material related to students that are in the educational levels of K through 12. And how to combat different types of issues related to systemic racism. Again, the paid parent leave for state employees is another one that was felt to be nonpartisan and common ground, as well as different pregnancy support services. Those are all items that affect the economic security of citizens, but also just it provides the opportunity to really stabilize more benefits for employees that do have access to paid parent leave. And to make it a little bit more equitable for both parties. And we've seen that on different employers here, but not at the state level. So that was something that we also advocated. And of course, the ERA bill, again, the 14th Amendment ensures the protection of women and their rights. But again, it's not necessarily included in the bill that relates to the 14th Amendment on the races, on the discrimination basis of gender, like it does for the racism against different types of religion or ethnicity, etc. So we wanted to expand that bill, be able to advocate for that as well too. And then this year we saw that there was a bill related to Ava's law. So again, it had unfortunately an incident where there was an incarcerated person who had to lose their child due to there not being a policy in place for women in custody. So that's something that we wanted to go ahead and promote different types of policies that help those types of situations moving forward. Next slide, please. Again, so I mentioned AUW, the Florida Policy Institute, again, is a nonpartisan organization that helps build information in terms of equity. There are a few resources that we try to give out when we're advocating for a bill. Again, you'll see in your slides, in the resources that were sent out to you via email a week earlier, just different types of pros and cons that we're looking at each issue. So for example, for HB 49, employment and curfew of minors, again, why is this an important aspect for us to focus on within an education association, right, within a SAC Act? Why would we want to focus on that? So again, I collaborated with AUW to find points that we felt strongly spoke about why it needs to be in place. How does it impact our students, right? So we combine different types of talking points that we provide to those in person and those that are going to be advocating virtually to say, you know, what does the passage mean? How will it impact our students during the day, the school next day, right? How does it impact the economic well-being of different organizations for those students that are employed in minimum wage jobs? So this is an example of a position paper. And as you can see at the top, we'll include the representative that is promoting that bill so that you can go ahead and also email them. Again, all of our representatives, just as they are in the Capitol, have their own local office in your city. So that's a great way to kind of identify some of your local state officials, to visit them in office if you're not able to go to the Capitol. Because those are the dates that they will be in Tallahassee, but not necessarily all throughout the year. It's just the 60 days that they're there. you can also advocate from that level in your local city too. So that will include information like that, will include points as far as why we want you to be able to speak and be educated on this topic. And then this is a great handout to leave with your representative. Next slide, please. At the federal level, CJ Powell highlighted some important issues related to mental health, for example, financial aid policies, concerning FAFSA. We also have important updates from advocacy on our level here within SACAC regarding different budget cuts that affect, Title IX, that's going to affect the student debt, funding for Pell Grants, for work study programs, for children that are in, childcare for post-secondary education reasons. Again, equal rights is something that we want to be able to promote to protect that there's no discrimination on the basis of sex. So lots of this information is issues that expand not only within Florida, but outside of Florida as well. And you can find your representatives if you use the tool. And again, we'll send all of these resources out in email so that you can see who exactly your constituents are at the Capitol. And if you're going to National Advocacy Day and for NACAC, you'll be able to actually set up appointments and meet with them. Next slide. Again, these are not the only ways to get involved. We're going to talk about how we can write directly to our representatives, but there are other opportunities for you to make comments, to be able to participate in hearings. For example, the Florida Board of Governors, they created a regulation in place when it came to any proposed changes to the Department of Education to have a period where you're able to post comments and post different types of opinions on any amendments that were made in the bill. And this is a great opportunity to be able to document. There's also petitions that you can fill out. You can stream any committee sessions online. For example, the White House has a committee on advancing equity and excellence for Hispanics that I'm a part of, that I try to be more educated as far as what different initiatives are taking place. You heard from CJ about activist alerts. Those are just simple texts that you can send from your phone, from your computer, to be able to list your name, to list the institution that you're representing, as well as the bill that you're supporting or against, with information as far as why you want to do that. And then, again, educating yourself on who your representatives are, who your committee members are. Sometimes you can collaborate actually with organizations that you feel sometimes don't support your opinion on bills because they have a common ground, right? So there's lots of ways to be able to be strategic in that by doing some research on who those representatives are of those bills, looking at organizations that promote the funding of those bills, and working with them on that way on nonpartisan collaboration. So again, I mentioned AUW, Florida Policy Institute. Those are all great ways to keep updates, and also to hear from your newsletters from state representatives. So lots of emails will send out, we're in week 1 of legislative session, we're in week 2, and these are the items that your senator representative were able to promote and the outcome of it. For any of those that are looking at how this actually looks like on the website, our department here with our Florida House of Representatives, you can see online the movement of the different bills. And for example, HB 25, Florida Bright Future Scholarship, originated with Representative Edmonds, and it was actually companioned in the Senate by Representative Powell. And this specific bill is to actually just expand the Bright Scholarship program to include not only Hispanics, but all of the 4 national recognition programs within Florida Bright Futures. So on the state website, you can see how it's been referred to the different committees. It's gone through the Post-Secondary Education Committee, Higher Education Appropriation Subcommittee, and now it's in the Education Appointment Committee. So those are all opportunities for you to follow the history. On the right-hand side, you can also see there's an opportunity for you to click on the widget that says track this bill, so that you can follow that and get alerts on any movements that are made with regard to the bill. Next slide. And again, it's very simple. I think the most important part that we try to showcase for any of our members when there's so much information, when there's so many back and forth on different issues, is that you really want to start small. So locating your information as far as where you live, who are your representatives in your area, go to the U.S. House of Representatives, enter your zip code. You'll be able to find the different types of representatives in your area. You can even contact them directly and email them if you want to set up a meeting, for example, in your local city. Next slide. And then finally, we have also postcards that before going to the postcard advocacy workshop with Frank, we do have postcards that were that we've been able to use from our funds. And during SACA, we're going to have a Florida government relations meeting for South Florida, for Florida government relations. And we're going to have these postcards available for you to fill out. They did cost money from our resources, so we do want to hand them out, but we want to make sure that if you are picking them up at SACA, that you are trying to do your best to send them out to your representative. So we'll have these available at our Florida Government Relations SIG meeting so that you can go ahead and send them out. It is a general election year, so maybe not for this legislative session that's going to be wrapping up in March, but definitely November, you want to go ahead and start using these type of postcards to advocate. And we'll also have business cards that you can pick up to represent SACAC. We understand that many students want to do this as volunteer work and not necessarily be affiliated with their school institution. So we want to go ahead and provide resources to you so that you can have that information that you with your representative, but are able to walk away with some additional handouts and information for you. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Frank, and we're going to get started on the postcard advocacy workshop.
Thanks, Rose. I really appreciate that. And there will be an activity involved in what we're doing today. So if you would like to write something down in front of you, or if you'd like to use a notepad or a Word document, I wanted to give you a few minutes heads up that we would be asking you to write something for us a little bit later. Again, my name is Frank Thomas. My pronouns are he, him, and his, and I'm a Senior Assistant Director of Admission at Rollins College in Winter Park, Florida. The reason why we're offering a postcarding workshop and not how to contact your legislator or anything that's a little broader is because the most effective way that you can influence your legislator is with a personal, even handwritten postcard or letter. So while the techniques we're going to share with you are good in general for communicating with your elected representatives, that's the specific reason why we're referring to this as a postcarding workshop. I'm going to talk about the two main places where you can influence this process. We'll review again some of the major issues that are in front of the legislature, and we're going to ask you what issues are important to you if there's something we haven't covered yet. We'll give you some tips on effective postcard writing, and then the activity is going to be to ask you to make a personal connection between one of those issues that matters to you and your own life or your own work. So that those few sentences can sort of be the core of the postcard or the letter that you'll eventually write to a representative. Now we'll go way back to Schoolhouse Rock for those who are my age and just kind of remind you about some of the steps and how a bill becomes a law. You know, very simply, somebody comes up with an idea, it's put into the proper legal language, it's presented to the legislature. In Florida, that would be the House and the Senate. There are 2 or 3 different stages in that reading process where different steps happen, such as referrals to committees, and a final reading and a vote. And then the bill is sent to the opposite chamber for them to repeat that process. If they agree on the bill, it's sent to the governor or at the national level to the president for their signature. If those 2 houses disagree, they'll get together and try and work out their differences to come up with a single bill that they can present to the governor in the state of Florida. And the governor has the option to sign the bill and approve it, or to veto the bill and reject it. And the legislature can override that rejection or that veto with a 2/3 vote in each side. Now, there are 2 main areas where you can get involved in this process. One of those is by having an idea. You don't have to be able to put something into legal language in order to present that to your legislator. And a great example of that is a bill we mentioned earlier, which relates to expanding eligibility for Bright Future scholars in Florida. It was a constituent and a representative who noticed that the Florida Bright Futures program will provide automatic qualification to students who are National Hispanic Recognized Scholars through the College Board's program, but not for students who are scholars under the other 3 programs, the rural and small town students, the Native American students, and the African American students under those recognition programs. So someone had an idea that we should just simply equalize these programs, and it was put into the proper language, and now there are bills before the House and the Senate. And the other place where you can get involved is once a bill has already been proposed. And that seems to be one of the more common ways for folks because they hear about legislation in the news that's been proposed, and they have a reaction to that one way or the other, and they want to try and influence that process. Well, because the bill goes through multiple readings and committee meetings to hash it out before a final vote is taken. There is time, even though the legislative session is quick, and there are a number of places where you can influence that bill before it reaches its final destination. And one really important thing for you to remember from a civics standpoint, the smaller the constituency, from senators to House members at the federal level, to senators and House members at the legislative level in Florida, to your local county and city representatives, the smaller that constituency, the more power your voice has. And the more likely they are to hear you and listen to you, because the legislators at the House and Senate level in the Florida represent smaller groups of people than their analogs at the federal level. So if you feel like sometimes you're shouting into the wind, you actually can have some influence here at the local and the legislative level. So just to review for you and not go into great depth, some of the bills that are being tracked includes colleges being prohibited from asking about race or ethnicity during the admission process, the increases to base salary for certain full-time teachers, some regulations related to how schools can be converted to charter schools, the expansion of automatic qualification for the Bright Futures program. House Bill 1, one of the ones you've probably heard a lot about, restricting access to social media platforms for minors and requiring those platforms to put certain protections into place for minors. Another bill that's gotten a lot of attention is changing regulations on employment for 16 and 17-year-olds, particularly lifting some of the restrictions on how many hours they can work per week and how many hours they can work on a school night and other types of workforce protections for 16 and 17-year-olds. There is an omnibus bill that is pretty much designed to unwind a number of the changes in the last couple of legislative sessions. Some of those in the bill known as Don't Say Gay, as well as restrictions on how you can object to educational materials and library materials and so forth. There is one omnibus bill that's designed to try and unwind a lot of those changes that were made in the last couple of years. As Rose mentioned, there is a bill to ratify the Federal Equal Rights Amendment. And then there are some changes to how teacher prep programs can educate future teachers about racism, sexism, oppression, and inequality, and how that they can teach those things to their students. This is yes, absolutely, we will be sharing with you this slide deck information, and there are some notes that you can't see in the slide deck that include additional links and information for you to track some of these bills. But this is a place where I want to stop for 30 seconds and see if you'd like to type in an issue or topic that you haven't heard us mention yet. Are there issues that you care about, particularly at the state level, that we haven't mentioned yet? Well, we're giving you a chance to do that if anybody would like to type something into the Q&A or the chat. The reason we're asking you this now is for our activity later, where we're asking you to connect your personal life and experience to this issue, so you make a personal connection for the legislator. We'll ask you if you'd like to choose from one of those issues that we've already mentioned, or if there's something that we haven't already mentioned that's important to you that you'd like to bring up to your legislator. I don't have anything typed in so far. That's fine. I'm going to go ahead and go right through and talk to you about 6 tips for writing your representative. Now, again, these will be good for any ways that you choose to communicate with your representative, but we're focusing on that personal, handwritten communication because I'm just going to give you a quick example, but one handwritten letter is as good as 15 emails or faxes, is as good as 50 stock letters that you've just filled in your information. That one handwritten personal connection can really make the difference in getting through to your representative. The first tip is to be concise. That's all I have to say about that. But secondly, you want to identify yourself as a constituent. That's really important because of the volume of issues and communications that legislators receive. They are much more likely to discount your letter or your communication to them if they don't actually represent you. So it's important for you to find the people that represent you when you do this personal outreach to make that connection with them. and remind them that you are a constituent. You are one of the people that determines whether they have a job continuing to represent you. You should stick with one issue on your communication, and you should mention what that issue is up front. Again, we're talking about offices that receive a high volume of communication. So we want to be concise and we want to get straight to the point. So the person reading it either knows where we're going or knows who they need to hand this to right away so they can get to the proper person and so that you can be heard. As CJ mentioned earlier, in our profession, we are the experts in this issue. We may not be a high-powered lobbying group with lots of money behind us, but we are the experts, the ones who are working where the rubber meets the road. And we are the ones that our legislators need to hear from when designing these issues. So provide some facts and resources for the legislator so that you can educate them. It's best if you limit it to your 3 strongest points. So if you're writing a plan out on how you're going to communicate with them and you've got 4 or 5 or 6 supporting points, pick your best 3. Focus on those 3 points or resources, again, to help keep your message concise to your legislator. Make a personal connection. And this is the activity that we're going to practice in just a couple of minutes at the end of this presentation. You are much more likely to get through to that legislator if you can demonstrate some kind of personal connection to the issue that you are advocating for. How does this affect you? How has it affected you, or affected the ones that you love, or affected the ones that you work for, or the people that you represent? How are you connected with it? That's one of the most impactful ways that a handwritten letter or postcard can get through to your representative, is for them to know that you have a personal stake in this issue, and that's why you care about it. And as I mentioned, I kind of stepped on my own point there, but you are the expert. So be polite, of course, in your communications with your representatives, but take a clear and firm position. You're advocating for a reason. What is it that you're advocating for? You're not just educating the legislator, but you want them to take a specific action. You want them to propose a bill or to support or vote against a particular bill. You want them to take leadership in a particular issue. So take advantage of the fact that you are the one with expertise in this field and bring that to your legislator when you communicate with them. Okay, so it is our activity time. We are in a webinar format, so we don't have the option to turn on cameras and microphones, but this is where we're going to ask you to use the Q&A or the chat boxes that are available to you, because we're going to ask you to share some of your examples in about 3 to 4 minutes. So what we'd like you to do is take one of those topics, either a specific bill or a general issue that you've heard us talking about so far today, or an issue that's important to you, and write 2, 3, 4 sentences that makes a personal connection between that issue and your life, your family, your work, or your experience. And at the end of those 3 or 4 minutes, we're going to ask you, for those who feel comfortable, to share some examples of that personal connection that you've made. And I'll tell you at the end of that 3 or 4 minutes why we're not providing you with a template to do this. So at this time, there'll be a little bit of silence here, but I'll let you know when we have 2 minutes and 1 minute left, and we'll come back together to just write a few sentences about an issue that's important to you that would go into a postcard or letter and demonstrate that personal connection that you have to the issue. We have about 2 minutes left. About 1 minute left. And it's okay if your sentences aren't perfect. The idea of the activity is just to get you started on this part of the issue. Please feel free to keep writing or thinking on this issue. But at this point, I'm going to ask you right now, to those who are ready, to copy and paste or to type an example of their sentences into our chat or our Q&A so that we can share those with our colleagues. And while you're doing that, I'll mention that the reason why I haven't presented a template for you is because of my own experience on the admissions side. I have read tens of thousands of letters of recommendation, Rose has as well, and I can, no matter how well intentioned, I can tell when that is a template or a form letter that compared to something that has been written organically. So what we're trying to help you do here is put your voice into this connection that you're going to make with a legislator. Let's see here. So again, we'll give you an opportunity to put that into either our chat or our Q&A. We're nearly done here. We're probably going to be able to finish for you at the top of the hour. For those of you who've given us your lunch, your lunch hour, we really do appreciate that. We'll give another minute for anybody who wants to add their example here. If you would like some feedback from us, if you don't want to share your example here, feel free to reach out to our governmental relations email address, which you'll be getting some communications from us soon. And Rose and I will be happy to help you tailor and personalize this message to reach out to your legislators.
Thank you so much, Frank. I feel that a lot of you are encouraged by just a couple of snippets of what we've all experienced from the side of the desk, but being able to share that insight is going to be invaluable to your state representative. So highly encourage you to share your bills that you're promoting or issues that you care about with us. We're happy to provide feedback, like Frank said, or just to be able to support you in any way possible. Again, we will be attending the SACAC conference, and we will be hosting a meeting for not only for our government relations, but also the state initiatives meeting. And we'll be sharing postcards. If any of you are going to be the National Advocacy Day, we hope to see you there representing SACAC. Again, it's a general election year, so November, we hope that you will use some of this information today to be able to advocate during the November election period. In addition to that, if you're looking for different advocacy efforts, there's going to be a webinar later this week that is just for you to learn more about an important issue. So AUW is going to be showcasing information on how to get involved at the school board level, right? We have so many representatives here from the college admission counseling side, but we also know that there are a lot of counselors in the high school side, guidance counselors. So we want you to be able to feel that you can learn more about how to get involved within your school districts. So there is going to be a webinar this week, and I'll go ahead and include that in the chat. But I'll be sending this information to Frank, and I have compiled all the resources together. We'll be emailing you right after this with the survey on the event today to see if there's anything that we can do to be able to improve, and also to take into consideration important topics and things that you want to be able to advocate moving forward. So I'll go ahead and also include in the chats the survey here so that you can fill that out. And then we'll be able to follow up via email with more information on how you can get involved. So whether it's whether it's networking with us, we're here to support you. Go ahead, Frank.
Yes. Yeah, so it is the top of the hour. If anybody needs to leave us, we understand, but we can stick around if a question pops up. And as I mentioned, the smaller your constituency, the more likely you are to be heard. Rose and I have a very small constituency in our SACAC members, and it was a member who brought the Bright Futures Scholarship legislation to our attention so that we could track it. So you can always start with one of us. if you've got a question about an issue or don't know where to start, we are your resources to help you be as effective as you can be.
Thank you, Frank. And I do see that in the question, someone said that they're excited about the webinar. It's National School Counseling Week, so that will be a great opportunity for to share with other counselors in your area about how to get educated on those important issues related to the education, the education battle that we're facing here. So again, great job with the work that you continue to do. Thank you again for all your support. Let us know how we can get involved, and we hope to see you soon at the SACAC conference. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.